I love Chainsaw Man. Although I only got into it at the end of July of 22, it grew to become a part of me in a metaphorical sense. It's one of my favorite series of all time. For a bit of context, I am someone who grew up in a home where I valued reading books in my room alone. It was always novels though, I never really enjoyed comics or manga. At some point though, when I was 11, reading novels didn't appeal to me anymore, and I put that fault onto myself and my growing interest in video games. I fell out of love with it. In 2021 though, a preview for the Chainsaw Man anime was put up on YouTube. I was excited because I heard some good things about it before, but beyond that it just faded into the back of my mind. Then at the end of 2021, the Chainsaw Man memes are appearing in my YouTube recommendations, and I watched them and thought, huh, that was cool. It's now July of 2022, and there it is again. So I decided late at night to give it a read because I didn't want to get spoiled more than I already was. Holy fuck. Those first 15 chapters I read before going to sleep, holy shit. I read the majority of part 1 in a day. Chapter after chapter, everything just kept elevating and I couldn't put my phone down until it was over. But what was it about that first read of Chainsaw Man that got me so into it? Chainsaw Man is a manga written by Tatsuki Fujimoto. Starting in October of 2018, it has since taken off as a cultural phenomenon for its incredible story, unique style, and its absolutely insane moments that can double as emotional or hilarious. At the time of this video, the manga is currently on its second part. Part 1 had ended in December of 2020, and Part 2 started in July of 2022. Now, some of my takes here may be somewhat biased in favor of it because of how much it means to me, but I'd like to first talk about what makes Chainsaw Man work, and that is from its story. The story at first follows a very Shonen Jump style structure, with the biggest similarities being average guy gets caught up in this crazy thing, and during said thing he gets epic powers and then meets more people who are in the same crowd. Past that though, I'd say that's where the biggest similarities end. The use of average guy is used very lightly here, as Denji is not normal. He lives in a shed, he sold one of his nuts to pay off his debt, and he has a pet devil. Anyways, the story of Chainsaw Man takes a turn at chapter 23, where majority of the characters we have met just all die. I was taken aback when the shift happened. It is such a sudden moment that feels like a dream sequence when it isn't. And that's how I could describe a lot of this manga. From this point onwards, there is a new cast of characters that get introduced, and most of them die off in the Assassin's arc. That leads into one of the biggest climaxes in the manga, and that would be the Gun Devil arc. The fight between Denji and Aki is so moving and intense that it too feels so unreal, and that is just how everything is up until chapter 95 once the Gun Devil arc starts. I didn't cry when Aki and Power died, I just stared at the panel for a few minutes in total disbelief. There's this chaotic messiness that it seems to have, which fits in the way that it is written so well, and that works to its benefits. It knows when to slow down too though. Some of my favorite moments in the entire series are when the characters are getting closer to each other or just doing some mindless stuff, and that's because of how well written the characters are themselves. Every character in Chainsaw Man is flawed. At the start, there are examples of this, such as Denji's shallow motivation to get laid, Power just wants blood and her cat back, Aki is inherently selfish and rude towards Denji and Power, and the same applies to them too. There's also characters like Himeno. Himeno is a great example, as when introduced, she is a quote-unquote goofball, and she doesn't seem to take the matter at hand all too seriously. Through a series of flashbacks though, it's shown how much she cares for Aki and how much he's changed her for the better. And once shit hits the fan and Aki gets stabbed because of her is when she breaks down. That's where she actually shows emotion, and it makes her all the more interesting to see. And then she pukes in Denji's mouth and nearly has sex with him. Speaking of which, Denji is a misguided person, and it makes sense that he's this way because of his upbringing. His mom died of a heart disease, he killed his dad after he nearly killed Denji, and from that point on, he was forever indebted to the Yakuza due to his father's unpaid debts. He lives in a fucking shed, but he is with Goober, his only friend in the world, and then he has that taken away from him by the thing he's eventually trying to get away from. Denji then meets Makima, who gives him a job and a family. Now, the family in question being the Hayakawa family dynamic is one of the best parts of Chainsaw Man. Seeing the three of them go from hating each other and trying to kill each other at certain moments, to having this sibling-like bond is so awesome. Denji first starts to respect Aki when he takes a knife for him, and Power is the annoying little sibling whom he is there for. He turns down going on a trip with the woman he loves to take care of Power because of her trauma from the Darkness Devil. This is where I feel Denji truly shows his growth as a person, and he even acknowledges it. At the start, all he wanted was to touch Power's boobs. He saves her from a devil specifically for that reason. Then, he gets what he wants and he feels empty afterwards. That is his first sign of growth, and it is soon ripped away by Makima, who does offer up some pretty good advice, but also doubles as manipulating him into doing her bidding, because she literally makes him touch her fucking tit to prove her point. Denji's lust is tampered with constantly by Makima throughout the story. Denji has his first kiss be puke. Makima buys him medication and also gives him an indirect kiss, which makes him fall for her more. The only time he truly gets to be with a woman and not have something bad happen for a while or have Makima intervene is during the Bomb Girl arc. He had genuinely fallen for Reze for a deeper reason that wasn't titties, which makes the fact that Reze was just trying to get his heart all the more upsetting. Even though Reze tries to kill him, he still wants to go on a date with her and even wants to run away with her. She leaves, but she changes her mind and tries to go back to meet up with Denji, only to be halted by Makima. When he finally confronts Makima and kills her, it's satisfying. She had ripped away everything from him to forward her own plans, and for him to escape that control she had over him is really amazing to see. Denji's story is one of growth and maturing. He gets incredibly depressed when Aki dies and even offers himself up to Makima with no questions asked because of it. Someone who had sheltered him and cared for him was gone, and for him to feel that way would be completely normal for anyone, especially when he was the one to have to kill Aki. Compare that to when Himeno died. After witnessing Aki cry, he thinks to himself that when thinking about Himeno, he can't get himself to cry or feel sad at all, despite the fact that she was one of the first people to offer to be his friend. He then goes on to claim that all the people he knew, if they had died, he would not feel bad. The only person he felt sad about was Pochita, and he thinks he doesn't have a heart because of it. During a date with Makima though, she reinforces that he does in fact have one by putting her head on his chest. Speaking of the wicked bitch, Makima is a very mysterious character. As the control devil, she doesn't really change throughout the manga. It's unnerving how she doesn't really show emotional response to most things. She's very subdued and calm about everything that happens. There's one panel that's incredibly frightening though, and that comes right after she kills Power. Denji and Makima go back inside after it happens. Denji asks if he's dreaming after being set down onto the couch, and Makima falls into his lap and laughs. Her want for the Chainsaw Devil to return as the hero of hell is so interesting because she's a massive fan of him, and she will stop at nothing to get him back. She even expresses how it would be her dream come true for him to, I can't believe I'm saying this, eat her and make her not exist, or fight alongside her to create a quote-unquote better world. She wants to create a world without pain and suffering, and therefore she must use the Chainsaw Devil to rid the world of all fears. For a bit of context, any devil that the Chainsaw Devil eats doesn't exist anymore, and it would have never existed. Some examples are listed by Makima herself, such as the atomic bomb. Denji does end up eating her in the end though, to ensure that Makima doesn't come back, of course. However, she was raised this way. The Japanese government contracted her when she was younger and turned her into the person that she was until her death and rebirth as Nayuta. Pochita even states that all she wanted was hugs, so to prevent Makima from coming back, Denji treats her with a lot of care. All of this is what makes her the Control Devil. She's such a fiendish character, kind of like Power. Power is a fiend, in a very literal sense. Power's journey throughout Chainsaw Man is one where she goes from hating humans and devils and wanting them to die, to considering a human to be her friend. She stays mostly the same throughout part 1 as being comic relief to a lot of otherwise tense moments. A great example of that would be the part where she unintentionally kills one of the Immortal Brothers. While he's gathering information on Denji under the disguise of Tendo, Power and Kobeni are arguing over Kobeni's car, and Power starts to drive it and immediately kills him and Denji. It's her relationship with Denji that changes. One of the first things Power does is trick Denji into trying to kill a devil for the reward of fondling her breasts, and then tries to sacrifice Denji to said devil. Denji does end up killing the devil and saves her cat, so she lets him. Past that point though, Denji and Power become buddies basically. There's no romantic tension between the two of them. They are purely friends, and Power admits that Denji was her first friend in chapter 91 in the scene that nearly got me to cry on a second reading. The way she decides to define Makima and tries to rationalize it out in her head to come to the conclusion that it's because Denji is her friend is so beautiful. She also does care for Aki, but that's mostly because he's friends with Denji and he gives her food and shelter. The last person I want to talk about is Aki. Aki is a very layered person. When we are first introduced to him, he is portrayed as an asshole trying to make Denji leave the public safety division by beating him up and spitting a cigarette he put on Denji to put it out. The idea of him being an ass is slightly deconstructed when he tells Denji that his entire family was killed right in front of him by a devil, and therefore Denji should not sympathize with other devils. Past that, there isn't much rivalry between the two of them, as once it's revealed that it was the gun devil that killed Aki's family, and Denji says that he has the goal to kill the gun devil, Aki grows to respect him. Not only that, but he's willing to put his life on the line to ensure others' survival. Aki's character further develops when Himeno dies. Right before she does, she recontextualizes why Aki treated Denji the way that he did at the start. She states that Aki is quick to cry. Even when newbies he'd been babysitting died, he'd cry in secret. And then Aki witnesses her death, his buddy and close friend of his gone. After the fight with Katana Man, Aki wakes up in a hospital. Power and Denji are in his room by his bed. Once they leave, he asks the cursed devil how many years he has left. It tells him he has 2 years. Aki goes to light a cigarette, thinks of Himeno, and he starts to cry. It's important to note that he doesn't quit here, and he continues on his path to kill the gun devil, which ultimately leads to his demise at the hands of Makima and the gun devil. For him to get to that point though, he tries to get Power, Denji, and himself out of the effort to kill the gun devil, but Makima doesn't allow that to happen. The future devil also has a part in this, as he's the one to show Aki how he and Power would have died, so Aki wanted to prevent that, which then led to his fate. That's all I have for some of the more integral characters in Chainsaw Man, and I also think that wraps up this section of the video too, because oh my god, this has all just been about the story. Next up is tone. As stated previously, the tone of the manga will go from something lighthearted and funny to serious and emotional very fast. What's so great about this is that it never detracts from a scene. Most mangas will keep the comedy and the serious bits away from each other. A large majority of media will try to get their audience invested by keeping everything tense and then releasing it after the climax with humor. And that can be argued as the case for almost any shonen out there. Chainsaw Man has a lot of elements of a dark comedy. For example, the Kobeni date. The Kobeni date serves as the comic relief in the last 12 chapters of part 1. However, that's not to say it isn't completely fucked up. The family burger scene was the first ever Chainsaw Man meme I saw. The execution of it is so terrifying and funny at the same time. Not only that, but it manages to stay in tone with what's currently happening. They go get some ice cream, and that's where the most iconic panel of Chainsaw Man comes from. There are a lot of moments like this throughout the story. Without it, it would be too tense, and it would most likely feel like it's taking itself too seriously when the plot is about a guy who can turn himself into a bunch of chainsaws. There's this very distinct style that Chainsaw Man has, and I feel it's important to talk about the author first before getting into this. Tatsuki Fujimoto is an interesting person, and it shows throughout all of his work. From making something about 2 guys who survive an alien invasion by dressing up as chickens, to stuff like Fire Punch, Goodbye Eri, Look Back, and of course, Chainsaw Man. With this in mind, if you read any of these pieces that he's created, you'll find very quickly that the man has some pretty insane thoughts and ideas. There also isn't that much information surrounding him, as almost everything about him is not told to the public. Oh, and he can also levitate, and that's pretty cool. Sorry, I'm getting slightly off topic here. Tatsuki Fujimoto is someone who really likes film. He said so in interviews from what I've heard, and at the start of his physical copies of Chainsaw Man in the in the author's statement, they all say, "I love insert movie here." And it's a neat bit of trivia that I think goes overlooked whenever anyone is talking about him. Even some of the movies that he puts in those author statements have references to them in the anime opening. Apparently, when he doesn't want to do manga anymore, he wants to get into the film industry. So back onto the topic of style. When considering other works from different authors, there's a very common theme throughout most. There's this need to have characters blabber on for a while over multiple panels, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. In my personal opinion, I don't enjoy hearing every single thought in a character's head during a fight. After doing my research, what Fujimoto does with all of his works is make it seem as if the characters are really taking in what someone said or when something happened. There will be multiple panels in succession to each other that have absolutely zero dialogue. In film, the ability to convey a character's emotions without having them express their thoughts and letting them use their face to convey how they are feeling or what they're thinking is a very important part of making a good film. In Tatsuki Fujimoto's work, it is done beautifully despite the fact that they are only pictures. He's very talented at being able to flesh out characters so that when the reader will get to these big inner monologue moments, they can take an educated guess as to what they're thinking or feeling. There's a lot of nuance and intricacies that go into these, and I cannot admire them more than I already do. I feel I've spoken enough on Tatsuki, and now I feel like it's time to get back into Chainsaw Man, and more specifically, the symbolism in it. There is so much symbolism in this story. I kid you not, I started going chapter by chapter with a notebook and dissected every I gave up on that. I actually gave up on that, I'll be real. Most notably with symbolism, there are a lot of parallels drawn with dogs in the series that are made with Denji and his relationship with Makima, as well as a lot of religious symbolism throughout the manga that is more so shown near the end of part 1. Those are the main 2 bits of symbolism I was able to notice while reading, and I feel like they are fairly obvious to the story, but I'd like to explore them a bit. Chainsaw Man makes it very apparent that Denji is treated as if he is a pet or dog to Makima, and that is quite literally stated within the first few chapters when she says that he can either die by her hands or become her pet. At first it's taken more lightheartedly with some sense of seriousness to it, but then it evolves into something different. In Volume 10, Makima invites Denji over to her place after finding him sick on a bench. While there, she makes it clear that Denji killed the Gun Devil and therefore can have Makima grant any request of his, and after everything that's happened to him, what he originally wanted has changed drastically. The original want definitely being sex has become wanting to become her dog, because he doesn't want to think for himself anymore. He'd much rather fully commit to being her pet, and it comes as a complete shock, but it makes sense. Dogs are the most loyal pets in the world, and Makima has the power to make people into her own metaphorical dogs. She also has a shit ton of dogs in her apartment, which makes the parallels and symbolism even more clear. This is going to be really brief because I'm not religious at all. Any knowledge that I have on Christianity comes from reading Dante's Inferno. Anyways, there's a very obvious connection that there is a hell. Makima has a painting which references a painting in Dante's Inferno. And there's also the 4 horsemen devils, those being death, famine, war, and conquest, which can also be known as control. Take a guess as to which character represents the conquest horseman. Comment your answers in the comment section below, and be sure to subscribe while you're down there too. That's literally all I got. Overall, I just love this series, and it's given me something that I definitively enjoy, which has never happened to me before. It's a very unique and interesting story that I will hold dear to my heart for the rest of my time on this planet. I hope you have learned something or have enjoyed this video essay on Chainsaw Man. Thank you for sticking around, goodbye, and take care.